inclusive leadership as something that has the power to make change. The power of community definitely has a bigger impact than, one of us stepping forward and having a loud voice.
I have a voice and I need to be able to use it. If not, I'm just setting the path for the women or people of color behind me to have it hard as well. And that was what made me realize, actually, I need to start using my voice in all the roles and in all the companies I'm across, else nothing will change.
Being able to understand and tune in to people around us and their lives, how they're feeling, what's troubling them, allows us to lead successful teams. So those two qualities, I think are absolutely paramount. I think a good leader mustn't feel threatened by the people that he's shaping to move through the ladder.
You're now listening to the SportsPro New ERA podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the New ERA podcast. Shivs, Gabs, it's great to have you with me. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for your privilege.
So today we're going to talk about the notion of inclusion, empowerment, transparency, opportunities in the field of women in sports. This is something that you will be very familiar with, having both been part of the New ERA program. And this kind of is preempted on the fact that we had some research happening with the University of Queensland, where various components were brought to the surface in terms of evaluating this program and the benefits it has had for the various people involved, but also what we can be doing better. So we're here kind of to bring that to the forefront and see where there needs to be further change and improvements. But both of you have a lot of experience in the industry. I will start with quick intros today. I'm Elena Kouyoufa, content manager at SportsPro. Typically, Katie Preston is also my co-host, but she is preparing a lot more exciting stuff for New ERA. So she'll be back with us very soon, hopefully. Shivs, I'll start by only mentioning that you are the VP heading global partnership sales at the Milwaukee Bucks, which I could leave at that, which is a huge thing on its own. But I know you're much more than that, and you have a incredible personal kind of story and background. So I'll pass on to you for a little intro before we get to Gabs as well.
Thanks very much. Yes, that is my current role. I still pinch myself every day thinking a crazy title, and it comes with great responsibility. But it's been amazing since I've been at this role. In the past, I've worked across football and rugby and triathlon and fight sport. I sort of also fell into sport at the start of my career. I studied architecture and have done nothing to do with that. So I very luckily have fallen to sport and have stayed in sport across my career. And so here I am right now.
Incredible. And Gabs, I'll come on to you. You also have an extensive kind of experience in a few domains in sport, particularly kind of spanning media rights, sales, acquisitions, and so much more. And now I think you're coming on to close to 8 years at ATP Media as Director of Chief Commercial Officer over there. So what's been your path and how does one get to where you are today?
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's my whole participation of the New ERA is to try to share, that career pathway with the mentees. And I must say, and I always admit to this, there was a big element of luck, being in the right place at the right time and almost, sort of having the lucky stars above you. But there's plenty of grit needed. And, my career in sports media, and it's now spanning over an unbelievable 30 years. And as Shiv said, I think we are very privileged to be working in this industry. It's fun, it's unique, it's created around communities and emotion. So it's been a wonderful 30 years, of which the last 8, as you rightly stated, have been with tennis. And tennis is extremely exciting at this moment in time as well. So every day is a happy day.
The common denominator between us all is this New ERA program. First of all, how did you find about the New ERA program and what drew kind of attention to it and why did you want to get involved in it? Gav, maybe if I come over to you first.
So I was very lucky to have been approached rather than trying to sell my capabilities into the program. And of course, being the person I am, I asked myself the question first and foremost, do I have what it takes? But it was a challenge for me, and it was a challenge to try to understand how I can support aspirational ladies in sports to achieve their potential, drawing on the experiences that I had that started in a slightly different era. So following the challenges and tribulations of young leaders today was also a learning for me, and I very much enjoyed that.
And Shivs, from your side, obviously, it was something I know that, there was an application process and like a whole, first of all, like when you saw it, what was your impression? Like, I know there's quite a few programs out there that do kind of try to empower women and mentorship. What was it that stood out and you said, I want to get involved in this?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I actually didn't realize there were programs that would help folks in sort of my stage of the career like this. I just had a very, very incredibly supportive colleague at a previous role who just championed all the women who work there. And she told me to put my hat in the ring and apply for it. And I sort of blindly applied, looked at the mentors in the previous years, was pretty blown away by the access I would get to all these incredible women in the industry, and applied, and very luckily you guys accepted me. So here I am.
I don't know if who wants to touch on the relationship between the two of you. Obviously, Gabs, as you said, you are a mentor as part of this program. So how has that process been of like rotating between kind of mentees and mentors, and what have you gained out of this kind of multifaceted approach?
I think, it's true that all interpersonal relations start with chemistry. But it's also underpinned with a desire to have a positive impact. And every mentee that I've had the privilege of supporting and having some one-on-one time with, I managed to develop a relationship with. And I'm still in touch with some of the mentees from the first program. And I can see them developing their careers and gaining confidence and acquiring those leadership skills. So it's interesting to deal with different situations, with different people in different countries from different cultures. And you have to apply, your skills to being able to adapt for each particular case. But that's also the fun in it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of people have cited in the research that we also recently did with the University of Queensland was that feeling of connection and the opportunities to then escalate your career and what it means to be a leader. Shivs, obviously now you are in a leadership position where you get to make these decisions. You get to kind of open these pathways for people. As you said, stepping into this, the main prompt you mentioned was like the opportunities that I can have. How has this program helped you, first of all, understand, that I am capable, I can do these, I can reach out and like strive for more, but also like implement it in your work as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've actually verbally like given this program enough credit. And I also hit the jackpot because I had Gab as one of my mentors in the last year. And if you mentioned chemistry and that, I think I was so lucky because I was really nervous to go into this program because I don't think I necessarily have always had support from senior leaders in the industry. But I think it was, and maybe Gab, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like 5 minutes in and I just felt so comfortable and we felt really comfortable with each other. We had similar shared experiences, but also vastly different experiences. And she was so open and she was so vulnerable from the start that it made me want to open up. And I also think that I would not be in my current situation, and I genuinely say this with the hand on my heart, I wouldn't be in the current position and opportunity I have without having been through this program and having had almost like developed the courage through these women who sort of made me realize I always had it in me. It was just really validating more than anything else to be able to speak to these women who are so senior and so successful at their jobs. And for me to feel like a small fish in a big pond, and for them to be like, that's not you. Why do you keep saying that about yourself? And through this program, I definitely opened myself up to the current opportunity I'm in and took it off the back of all the help I got from these amazing women.
A lot of this has been of like people being able to recognize and like one woman supporting the other in kind of, stepping off to the next on the next ladder. And there's a lot of that conversation in the industry of a lot of women, especially back in the day when there weren't so many opportunities in sport, that, they pick up that ladder and it's no longer there for the others. So Gabs, obviously you mentioned you've been in the industry for close to 30 years. So you've seen that from the very beginning, and for sure your experiences have been very different to ours nowadays. So it would be really interesting to hear from your side, what was that back then, how have things changed? And maybe if you could think of one thing that you're extremely happy that has changed, but maybe one thing that you still see persists, even though we continue to talk about this.
I mean, from where I started, and it was 30 years ago, precisely in 1996, I can see increased confidence in young women today. They understand their value much more than we did all those years ago. They are clear about their aspirations, and they are far more willing and comfortable to step forward. And that's in addition to, already seeing a leveling in the pay divide that we experience very strongly. There is greater pay parity now. There is stronger female representation in key leadership roles. And it is now probably just a moment of time, as the momentum builds, that the positive shifts that we are seeing signs of become positively and fully embedded in all organizations. And that's, without even referencing the fact that we were trying to break through in a slightly different environment where we were somewhat less protected by society around us.
Yeah, and you mentioned all the kind of positive things that have happened along the way, but I'm sure you still see issues that continue to persist and haven't changed. Of course, that is why also there are programs like the New ERA program as well, and so many others out there, because clearly there are things that are still not dealt with, and stuff that is still surfacing. So is there anything that, if you said, I leave what I'm doing now, and if I wanted to change one thing in the sports industry for women, it would be that, because I still see it day in, day out happening?
I mean, Shivs and I had a theme running on this very topic. Where do I start? I will start with, I think, where we could collectively make the biggest impact was for us as women to be more confident in our abilities and our skills and our voices. We have to sort of have that ownership of who we are and the impact we can make before we can convince, again, collectively, the organizations around us. So if there was one thing that I would like to magic into the psyche of women, it would be to find that confidence that they have within, and understand how fantastic we are and how important we are. And the rest will hopefully follow.
And Shiz, you kind of obviously share a kind of similar sentiment to that point from what I understand, but was there a particular kind of inflection point in your career where you realized that I have to gain that confidence, I have to believe in who I am, and like you changed how you started seeing things?
I mean, there were many inflection points in my career. I don't think I could pinpoint one, but I think it was a realization that I had fairly late into my last 12 years of working in sport, where it was exactly like Gab said. I was like, I have a voice and I need to be able to use it. If not, I'm just setting the path for the women or people of color behind me to have it hard as well. And we talked about like throwing the ladder down as we're climbing up it. I just knew because, and again, in my career, it wasn't anywhere close to being as hard as what Gab and her peers would have gone through and trying to work in sport. Like we've actually had it really easy in comparison, but at the same time, we fight different battles every day. And it was just that if I don't make a change and somebody coming in my position to replace me once I leave is going to have the same challenge. And that was what made me realize, actually, I need to start using my voice in all the roles and in all the companies I'm across, else nothing will change.
I think oftentimes we hear a lot in the industry about this notion of collective support, similar to what we're doing here through the program. It's like, how do we unite forces and how do we be more transparent about things? And I'm sure there have been times in your careers where things have not happened necessarily because you kind of pushed forward, but because someone else showed up for you, like similar to what you mentioned earlier, Shivs, about like someone opening your eyes to this program, or Gabs, for there will be other times for you that someone maybe said something to you or a piece of advice. You know, I think the term collective support is pretty abstract as like a whole notion until you yourself find that confidence in you. When someone opens your eyes to something, you can actually take it on. So I don't know, Shivs, in your experience, kind of what has allowed you to take on those opportunities that people bring to the forefront for you? Because I think that's also an issue. Sometimes there's opportunities right there in front of us that we don't see for some reason, or we don't allow ourselves to go towards.
In my experience, it actually has been my peers more than anyone else through my career who just helped me, sort of like boosted me forward to take these opportunities. Whether it was like my wonderful colleague at Chelsea who put me forward for this opportunity, or in other roles before where I just had women who've dealt with the same things I have, who've always wanted one of us to have a voice. And it's almost like if one of us wins, all of us wins. And that's really what's helped me. It's been my peers who've sort of been in the trenches with me who realized that one of us has to take it forward, and like we take turns all the time. And that's what collective support has meant for me.
And Gabs, obviously you've been across various fields in the industry, and I'm sure you've heard the word allyship been brought up for so many reasons, so many times. What do you think is something that still holds back organizations to truly integrate within their core what allyship means, not just for women, but generally, like how can we build each other up, and what is still holding back organizations from taking that off and working towards it?
I think we always talk about inclusive leadership as something that has the power to make change. And I think there are many stakeholders in every organization to be able to implement those changes, because they don't happen by accident, obviously. I think for as long as, what do you call it, allyship or community, for as long as everybody in an organization, regardless of gender or level or age, actively works towards shaping that environment, actively promotes that change in a distinct way, then, that power of community definitely has a bigger impact than, one of us stepping forward and having a loud voice. I think it's also revolving around the leaders themselves, because once leaders commit, then inclusion and change becomes embedded rather than optional. The key buy-in in any change, any inclusion in any organization is for the leaders in that organization to commit, because that inclusion then will become embedded rather than being optional.
Empowering the future of sports industry leadership for everyone committed to fair representation in sport. You're now listening to the SportsPro New ERA podcast.
You touched on the word leadership, and we spoke about like using your voice earlier. In various conversations I have had, there's a lot of, discussion around your leadership style and what it means to be a leader. Personally, that kind of conversation always confuses me, because I think a strength of being a good leader is being to be super adaptable and being able to read the room and being able to work differently with different people you have. So oftentimes when people try to define their leadership style, I often feel it like puts it in a little box. And I think if you are a good leader, you can't put it in a box. So I'd be curious, maybe, Shivs, if you want to touch on this. I know you've had obviously people who have been your managers, now you're also managing and so forth. Like, how has that developed for you in terms of, do you have a leadership style? What do you think makes a good leader?
I actually am super lucky that in my current organization, my Chief Business and Strategy Officer, Matt Pizarris, is probably the definition of one of the best leaders I've ever had. And I am not saying this because he pays me the salary every month. He didn't plug me, I promise. But it was from like the first 5 minutes of meeting him. And I just know he puts his money where his mouth is, because he believes so much in female leadership. And when he told me, like, I wanted to meet the rest of the team before I got hired, both of the rest of the senior leadership were women, and one of them women of color. And for me, that was just, he really believed in what he was selling me into the organization. He has been nothing but supportive from day one. I can go to him with anything. I have only ever seen him encourage every single person in our organization, no matter how old, what color they are, it has never been an issue for him. And I think that's the style of leadership I would like to emulate, of just being fundamentally a good person. Because at the end of the day, we spent majority of our week with our coworkers. And, I'm not here to say we're all family and whatnot, but we just have to be empathetic to what people are going through on a daily basis outside of work, to then be able to treat them like humans at work as well. And he is unbelievable at that. And that's sort of the leadership I would like to emulate someday. And I'm learning slowly.
I think that's the biggest thing you learn from good leaders. Like, I've also been really blessed to have like a really good manager right now. And I feel I have learned so much, because I think that's what happens when you have a good leader. You want to emulate that. You want to become more like them. But Gabs, I'm sure from your side, I know, because it still exists today, but especially back in the day, even more so, there was this notion of you have to act more like a man when you go into these rooms. You have to present your way in a certain, be more assertive, don't show your soft side. This has changed quite a lot, and I think we can tap more into this feminine energy that we talk about, but at the same time, it still really exists. And I think in our subconscious, we also have it. I know I have it when I walk into a room full of men. I feel I have to be, more strong, more like them, change the picture. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure you have experienced that, and you have also seen the change. So it would be great to have your insight in terms of how that leadership style from your side has evolved in terms of how you lead, but also how you would like to be led.
That's a very interesting notion, and you are absolutely right. In my era, when I started, the safest place was to be one of the boys and behave like one. But with maturity and with experience and the confidence that comes with that, I've come to understand that the two words that Shivs already mentioned earlier, vulnerability and empathy, actually distinguish us so strongly and give us so much value, especially in organizations where those qualities are not omnipresent. And it is now a quality that is valued and understood much more. And it is certainly the style of leadership I apply to myself. Being vulnerable makes me more human, makes me a more mindful leader, makes me more accessible. And being empathetic, that goes without saying. I mean, being able to understand and tune in to people around us, understand what's going on in their lives, how they're feeling, what's troubling them, allows us to lead successful teams. So those two qualities, I think, are absolutely paramount. And as for the leader that I follow, I think definitely having those qualities, but also not feeling threatened. I think a good leader mustn't feel threatened by the people that he's shaping to move through the ladder. And that's quite tough for some.
I see it personally as well. Like, that's when you grow, like, what's the expression? All tides lift the boats. I don't think that's the right expression, but something along those lines. But basically that if you grow, the rest of your team can grow together, and that should make you really proud and really happy. And it is such a unique trait, so 100%. And going back kind of to the research that we did with the University of Queensland, this was kind of an independent body of research. Yes, they support the program, but we really wanted this to be something that kind of, we don't have any involvement. We don't know who took part in this research. And it was very much a thing of kind of having that research back inside and then trying to see how we can best apply it to the real world, because we want this to be kind of for there to be impact, to continue these progressions and hear these incredible stories of women who have been able to pay it forward from kind of the mentorship side, but also the cohort that's been involved in how they've excelled in their career. And it makes us really happy to see, like, first of all, that there was a lot of positive sentiment towards the program and a really kind of collective gratitude towards it. But at the same time, there are things that need to change, and we don't want to pretend like they don't exist. And from your side, it would be great to hear kind of what has been maybe like the biggest success story within this program. It could just be meeting each other or keeping in touch with others, but obviously the program has offered things. I know, Shivs, I saw you last year on the stage, which was incredible to see you and like be able to see like how incredibly you commanded that conversation. And it's not easy to be up on a stage, and I think sometimes it's so hard to even get those opportunities, but also kind of what could be done differently. Like I know most of these sessions that we do remain online. We have people from all over the world, which makes it quite hard to coordinate, with time zones and so forth. So if, for example, you were to suggest anything, keep doing something and change something else, like what would your advice be?
So obviously I have reviewed and reflected on the findings. And I have to acknowledge that several areas where further improvement was suggested would be beneficial, and in particular, there were many reflections around the structure around the mentee and mentor sessions, and whether that should be a little bit more formalized. And I can see why that would be a topic, because we are all different, and not knowing what we're going to each session with and having different structure around it is probably not as conducive to having structure. Some of the suggestions that also came through the research around, for instance, quite specialized areas of coaching in public speaking. I don't think the program was specifically for that. That's a very niche skill that is coached by specialized coaches. But what is important is that we take that constructive feedback away and see where we can apply it and how we can apply it to the future iterations of the program, building on the good that has already been achieved and all the good things that the program delivers. And we all know what those are. And time zones will always be time zones. And, there's obviously, just acknowledging once again, the constructive feedback that was received, but also the good feedback, of which there was a majority, that created what the program is now. And it's given a lot to us as mentees and hopefully to us as mentors and hopefully the mentees as well. And I'm sure that you guys will be taking that away and making improvements where improvements are possible. But we can't deal with time zones. They are what they are. And if we want to have participants from all corners of the globe, unfortunately, that's going to mean early in the morning for some and late at night for others to be able to come together as a community.
Yeah, for sure. There are several limitations, but as you said, we are trying to harness what we can from that feedback. And there is still kind of a more formalized kind of published report that the University of Queensland is working on, because it's not something that we just want to keep for our program. There are so many programs out there doing so much good, and it's important for not only for programs, but internally in companies. As you said, there are so many companies that go to events, they have their employees speak and present stuff, but it sounds really exciting when you get offered it, but then when it comes for you to be on stage or to prepare for it, it seems so daunting and stressful. And who does get that guidance? And for us, it will be important to see how we can bring in that expertise and the opportunities that we offer to people to, be able to, as you said, have a more structured approach to certain things. So hopefully, this will all be to come very soon. But yeah, I don't know, Shivs, from your side, if, what your feedback would be, the good, the bad, what you're keeping, what you're changing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm very lucky to be based in London, which is at the hub of where the program is. So I get access to my mentors. Like Gab and I have met in person a few times, which a lot of other mentees probably don't have the opportunity to. And then also, obviously, like you said, the speaking opportunity came through you guys, which is amazing. And off the back of that, I'm speaking at Spobis next week. And it's, it's these opportunities that open more doors for me, which is unreal. I just feel really bad for a lot of the peers in my cohort who aren't based here and don't have access to the opportunities like I do, even though they have qualified and are accredited to be a part of the program the same way I am. And I think potentially having a buy-in from the organizations that they're part of would be something that maybe we could look to work on. Obviously, you can't expect somebody to fund the travel from Australia to London for SportsPro, but the organization can handle that a little bit more. And I think maybe involving the organizations that the mentees are part of, and to figure out how to get their buy-in in a general sense of not just supporting the one person from the organization who's a part of the program, but also to show that they do support women and non-binary folk who work in sport and are shouting about their visibility in a bigger and more global way as well through that support would be ideal. Again, I don't know how we do that. It's hard to get corporations involved, but there is an opportunity for us to try.
You know, you both mentioned about the incredible experience and support you've had, but I think a huge part of this program, Gabs, you mentioned earlier that you're still in touch with previous people that you've been connected with and are still in touch with them. What is it in like for day to day that you consciously think about, that you pay it forward, you continue to do good? And Shivs, from your side, as you said, like you've also had this incredible experience that maybe you hadn't seen before or weren't aware of, like how you can best, like now you know what it is to have a good mentor, like how when someone comes and like messages you and says, you know, hi Shivs, like how do I get to where you are? What can you do, you know, in terms of supporting, and how do you try and pay it forward within like the busy schedule that I'm sure everyone has, like for personal life, everything?
I try and pay it forward by a very set thing that I do. I do 4 calls a week. 4 calls a month, not a week. So it's 1 a week, and it's 30 minutes of my time that I give to somebody on LinkedIn who has reached out to me, or through my networks reached out to me, who wants to talk about how to get into sport or how to progress a career in sport. What I don't do is jump on calls with people who just message me and say, I want to learn about your career, because that to me is a bit of a cop-out. I don't know what you want to learn. You've got to be really specific about what you want to get out of it. And again, not that I have much to teach, but I'm always happy to share my learnings. And that's my way of giving back. I'm not part of any formal mentorship program, but 1 call a week, mostly with women, ideally with women of color, wherever I can give back is what I'm doing. The 30 minutes of my time is a lovely coffee in the morning and getting to talk to somebody who someday might be hiring me, you know? So it's giving back, but it's also kind of selfish, I guess, in a way.
No, that's incredible. I think the point you made earlier about like be very specific in what you want is like some advice that I also had, because when I started in the industry, I just wanted to be part of the industry. I didn't know what I was after. I knew I loved sports. I played sports. I was studying, you know, stuff to do with sports, but I wasn't being at all specific. I was like, I just want to learn about it. And that's the one thing that a lot of people said is like, I don't have that much free time to just like have an open-ended conversation. It's like, try be specific and I'll try give you the best advice I can. So for anyone who is listening and kind of does want to reach out to people, like from my end, that is something that I've heard again and again. So it's great to hear that, you know, you also mentioned that. And also another piece of advice I would give to people, because I had a lot of ChatGPT messages in my LinkedIn inbox, is like, try be authentic. Like, don't sit in because you see someone who has a title or is something that you aspire to be someday. Try to perfect everything by plugging it in AI and ChatGPT and write the perfect message to send to Shivs, who works in the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, no need to do that. Yeah, 100%. And Gabs, from your side, obviously you're part of this program, giving back, but is there anything else that you consciously do either in your spare time or within your organization?
I've tried to be present for younger people who feel they would benefit from my time for quite a while now. I think it's almost a duty. But what I found is that the New ERA program created more structure for me around how to do it. It's almost like a scaffolding that I can lean on. So now I do it in a much more meaningful way, because it's almost as if I acquired, you know, some new skills in the program. And I'm certainly applying them within the program, but also outside. And I'm accelerating. I am augmenting the time that I carve out every week to be available, to be present. But you know, I'm not going to be reactive to an AR message. That's what I'm too old for that. What I look for is ambition and hunger and real, fire in the belly. If I see that fire, then more often than not, when I recognize that, I will do everything in my power to support it if I can support it. But it's quite unique, and it's to do with chemistry as well. We touched on that earlier. You just create that connection with some people and you see the aspiration and the ambition in them, and you always recognize yourself. That's the nicest thing, when you recognize yourself, some years earlier, and you help that person perhaps accelerate their pathway to the experiences and the findings that you acquired. So if anything, I try to find the time and more availability.
I think just to kind of wrap things up, a lot of people in the industry feel they can't kind of implement change and bring about change if they don't have a fancy title, if they're not like head of a board. And I think that is such a bad kind of mindset to have. And I think a lot of people just expect that top-down change. From your experience, if someone is feeling they don't have the power to change, but as you said, Gabs, they have that kind of ambition, the fire in their belly that, they really feel strongly about something, what would your advice be for them to contribute to that change?
Don't try to change things you can't control. Understand that change rarely begins with authority. It begins with ownership. Focus on the areas that you can influence with your team, your peers, the processes around you, and model the behavior you want to see. And that will be the trigger. So don't try to change what you can't change, and start with yourself.
I mean, I echo everything Gab says. I think don't take for granted the change that can happen when you influence people just around you. Like, it takes every single voice in a choir for it to be a full sound. And you don't have to have a fancy title. It doesn't matter if you're an intern or an assistant, but if you are able to positively walk the walk and talk the talk of what you believe in, you will start influencing the people around you without realizing, with that mindset. So don't be afraid of creating change at any stage of your career.
And I think to add to that is also sometimes is like, just start with the tiniest thing. As you said, like even speaking to someone and asking them, how was your day? How are you? That personal, empathetic side that we touched on before, I think is so important, because sometimes we get so bogged down in the day-to-day that just speaking to someone and making, to Gabs' point earlier, like be accessible to people, I think is such an easy way to actually bring about that change and encourage them to use their voice. The advice you have both shared has been incredibly useful and insightful. I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with it. You both had like very different trajectories in your career, but obviously paying it forward in every way possible, and are really grateful to have you on the New ERA program as well. And hopefully a year from now we can catch up either in a podcast or in person, hopefully, and see the change that has been brought around. But yeah, super appreciative of all you have contributed, and for your time today as well to share your advice to everyone who will tune in. So thank you so much. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you both here.
And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you so much.
Empowering the future of sports industry leadership for everyone committed to presentation in sport. This is the SportsPro New ERA podcast.